Hello, everyone, and my guest today is Senator Steve Erdman, the representative for the 47th District of the Nebraska Legislature. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
A lot of things going on here in the interim before starting back up with the new session coming up in January. One of them, I guess, to talk about initially is kind of an improved outlook for state finances at this point with the latest forecast from the Economic Forecasting Advisory Board.
Yeah, the forecasting board came out and they've estimated we'll have another $266 million over the biannual budget, and that's a good news. And we shall see how we spend that. There's already been some comments in Lincoln about how they want to spend that. I think it should go to property tax relief, but we'll see what happens.
It sounds like you and Governor Ricketts are both on the same page in that respect.
We are on the same page on property tax relief, yeah.
With the items that other people are wanting to spend these on, we haven't heard necessarily that much about it here in western Nebraska in the Panhandle. What type of things have people been proposing?
Well, it's unusual to see how things happen there when last year when we came in and the forecasting board had found an extra $25 million, all of a sudden it was like the 4th of July celebration all over again. And so we will find many ways to spend it, but not too many of those will be prioritized. And property tax is the #1 issue that we got to deal with, and so that's my focus: is take any extra revenue we have and give it to property tax relief.
A related subject, of course, we have the True Nebraska petition drive that's going on right now that you're supportive of.
Correct.
A lot of people are saying if we don't get anything done with the legislative session coming up here in 2020, when it comes to real property tax relief, that petition drive, it's going to take it out of the hands of the lawmakers to decide how to do it.
Right. You know, Scott, we in the legislature never make a decision unless we're forced to. And every time we come up with a budget shortfall, we make the decision to make the cuts to make it work. And this legislature is just like all the others. They will never make a decision unless they're forced to. And I can tell you right now, we will not get significant property tax relief through the legislature. And if you want significant property tax relief, sign the petition. It is your only hope.
It is. Okay. With that having been said, of course, one of the things that's also coming up here in 2020 is the census, where we are likely to have boundaries shift again after redistricting takes place.
That's correct.
And really that balance between rural and urban interests is really going to slide more onto the urban side of things than rural. So obviously I would think having people make sure they get counted is important.
That is correct. You know, we've had an estimate that rural Nebraska means any county that's not Lancaster, Sarpy, or Douglas County have lost 90,000 residents. Those 3 big counties have picked up 80,000. So if they've picked up 80,000, there's a good chance they'll get 2 more representatives. And if that happens, they'll have 27 in those 3 counties, and all the other 90 counties will have 22.
Is there a way to, and just because that mix will be in place in the legislature, I would assume it doesn't necessarily mean that the interests of rural Nebraskans will be forgotten, but I would assume it's going to be harder to push through legislation, benefiting rural Nebraskans as well as those in the urban areas.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of the things that happens in Lincoln and the eastern part of the state, they function differently. Their economy is somewhat different than ours. They function on taxes because all of our taxes go there. All the rest of the state functions on agriculture. And when agriculture is not doing well, then we don't do well. And that's a real hard thing to get across to those people who live in Lincoln, Omaha, that agriculture is suffering.
Of course, there are a lot of other subjects that are going to be coming down the pipe here later on this year and into the next legislative year, as well as elections coming up. We'll be right back to talk with Senator Erdman about that and more in just a moment. And we're back, and my guest today is State Senator Steve Erdman, who represents the 47th District in the Nebraska Legislature. Not a small district, by the way. It's one of the bigger ones that's out there, yours and Tom Brewer's. First of all, how do you have to have with that much area, a wide diversity of ideas and subjects that come across your desk. How do you handle all of those?
Well, one of the common issues is property tax.
Yeah.
That's common everywhere. And another common issue that I seen last year when we did our town hall meetings is the wildlife. Wildlife damage and lack of compensation.
Which was an issue that came up here a little bit earlier this year.
That's correct. So those issues are very similar. as I go across the state. We did town hall meetings last November in every one of the 10 counties that I represent. And that week that I did those town hall meetings, I drove 985 miles and never left the district.
Wow. It's a lot of a lot of driving and still staying.
Yeah, it's 10 counties.
Still staying local, so to speak.
Right.
That having been said, of course, we have an election coming up here pretty soon.
That's correct.
And you're nearing the end of year number 3.
Yes, this is the end.
Are you looking toward going for re-election?
My goal is to do that. My goal is to announce, and we'll make a press release early this week about that very thing, and we're going to seek re-election. We have some things to finish yet. We have to still complete this property tax relief program. We've got to get that fixed. Some other issues I'm dealing with is changing the way we value ag land for taxation purposes. We've got to make them transition from the market approach we now use to a productivity approach so it's more fair for agricultural producers. And so some of those other things that we've done in the past that I think are beneficial, last year, one of the bills we introduced, they called it the destroyed property bill. If your property was destroyed any time before the 1st of July in the year that you pay the taxes on, and you make application with the county, and they discover and prove that you have destroyed property, your valuation will be changed to what's left. And that saved taxpayers millions of dollars last year with the flooding in eastern Nebraska.
I was going to say, and the reason for the destruction, it's not just flooding, it's really across the board. It has to do with loss of property, loss of valuation.
Right. Anytime your property is destroyed, whether it's fire, tornado, wind, hail, whatever the problem is, whatever the issue was that caused the damage, if it's greater than 20% of the value of your property, you stand to be adjusted back to that value. And so it made a huge difference. When I introduced the bill, the flood hadn't happened yet. Once the flood happened, it became a very popular bill.
I'm sure it certainly did. And of course, with the ag land valuations being based more on production basis as opposed to otherwise market value, that's something that can certainly help ag producers going forward if we can get that through.
That's correct. You know what we do now is we sell probably less than 0.5% of the ag land in a given county on a year. And we base the other 99.5% of the farmland value based on that 1.5% selling. That doesn't make any sense. So we're going to try to go to a productivity approach so everybody will have the same value for the same kind of soil.
Any other specific subjects that you might be looking forward to going forward, assuming re-election?
I think that one of the things we need to focus on is how we spend our money. And on the Appropriations Committee this last year was my first term on their first session. I was disappointed that we didn't set our priorities to where we spend our money, and we just spend them however we feel on the day that someone comes in and makes a good presentation. We've got to stop doing that. We've got to start prioritizing how we spend our money.
Yeah, something that every senator needs to keep in mind as a steward of the taxpayer dollar, basically.
That's right.
When it comes to money that gets sent to Lincoln and then dispersed back out. Senator Steve Erdman, thank you very much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.